I would think of what's happening now in robotics and AI as just another evolution. I think what we are trying to do as a race, we are trying to get rid of the repetitive, boring, dangerous, dirty tasks. I think every human deserves not to do a boring task, not to do a dangerous task, and not to do a dirty task. So what this will do for us, this will offload us from these tasks and make us think and experience, I would say, what we were really meant for as humans.
Okay, we are here with Fady Saad. Fady, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, what I'd love to do for our audience is maybe just take a minute, introduce yourself, tell us how your career ended up at Cybernetics and what it is you all do.
Sounds great. I'm originally from Egypt. I was born, raised, educated in Egypt, studied mechanical engineering at the American University in Cairo. Started my career there at Siemens and then spent 8 years in the corporate world. The company merged with Nokia, created a third company called Nokia Siemens Networks. I was based in Egypt, but I was traveling all in North Africa, Europe, and did different functions from project management, marketing, business development, strategy. And after 8 years of doing that, I knew my heart was in small companies and building and scaling companies. And I really got obsessed with the idea that one of the most effective ways to build and scale companies, to think of them as complex systems. And this got me to spend a lot of time trying to study systems and how they work and how we can create them and design them. And this led me to this unique program at MIT called System Design and Management, which is a joint program between Sloan School of Management and the School of Engineering. 2011, I quit my job, took my family all the way from Egypt for the first time in the US.
Wow.
Obviously, first time in Boston, first time at MIT. And I started a journey trying to understand this intersection between entrepreneurship, management, system design, and innovation, basically. And it was an amazing experience. And I actually started the company while in the program because I came across a book that said that the best way to learn about companies is to start one. So I said, okay, let's do it. So I joined one of the entrepreneurship classes at MIT. I met back then my co-founder. We started the company. The company was not a huge success. We were successful in certain limits, but obviously it was not a huge success, but the learnings were phenomenal. I learned a ton from the whole venture experience, then all the courses that I took at school. Then after finishing my graduate studies at MIT, I got involved into the robotics ecosystem here in Boston. This is back in 2012, 2013. And I joined a local company here. Company was doing lots of government grants with DARPA, the Air Force, the Navy. And I tried to help the company secure more funding, secure more grants, but more importantly, think about ways to commercialize some of these phenomenal technologies they were developing. And this is where I realized that, wow, there is a problem in commercializing robotics technologies in the US. And later on, I realized it's worldwide. And this was an interesting problem for me because despite the fact that we have lots of incubators and accelerators, most of those are geared towards software technologies, but not robotics and kind of hardware and detail. Because even though that starting a company is more or less the same for all technologies, but once you get to the point of a prototype, there's a fundamental difference in terms of the dynamics between pure software companies and robotics companies. We can get into that later, but this was the inspiration to start MassRobotics, which is an organization to help create the ecosystem in Boston and really help companies speed up the commercialization of their technology. I co-founded MassRobotics with some of the much more experienced, much more plugged into the ecosystem folks. And my contribution was really the kind of the business model of the organization, the how this organization will engage with startups. I led the fundraising for the organization and I developed the corporate partnership model, which was a core part of the whole system. We grew MassRobotics from just an idea to probably one of the largest hubs of robotics startups in the US. And a couple of years ago, I saw a gap in the early stage funding for robotics companies and really robotics worth to be a whole investment class on itself. It's not SaaS on one end of the spectrum, and it's not biotech at the far end.
Yeah.
So somewhere in between. And this was the inspiration to found Cybernetics Ventures, which is a $50 million fund, early stage investment, pre-seed and Series A. I joined forces with an amazing partner, Mark Martin, who's a former VP at Analog Devices. He led their industrial automation sensors group, and he comes with tons of experience. And he was an advisory board member at MassRobotics, and we worked together on different projects. We launched a fund and we made 11 investments so far between the US and Europe. And yeah, here we are.
What a fantastic story. And it's always awesome. I can feel your passion. Absolutely. And what an amazing vantage point, right? We're on the precipice of so much innovation actually coming to fruition. You actually just talked about the difficulty in commercializing robotics, right? I'm sure there are still difficulties, but it's never been more ripe, never been more prime, right? For that to happen. Maybe just give us a sense. What are some of the most popular problem spaces being tackled by robotics today?
So obviously from my conversation with hundreds of corporates over the last 10 years, I met lots of corporates in different verticals. And this really informed me about what are some of the different verticals that are really serious about robotics and really pulling the technology. And basically, when you synthesize all of that, it came down to 4 key verticals. Manufacturing and logistics are on the top, obviously, historically highly automated verticals. And they continue to be looking at robotics and how they can take their automation to the next level of robotic and more kind of smart machines. Then there are 2 semi-nascent verticals. Construction is one of them. We led one of the very early summits around robotics and construction back in 2017. And no one at that time was speaking about robotics and construction. But we saw the writing on the wall with our partner at Autodesk. And now it's actually, I wouldn't say it's nascent, it's pretty hot now. Half of our portfolio at Cybernetics is in construction space. There is lots of activities and mainly driven by labor shortage, higher pressures on productivity, increasing safety and working conditions for the workers. All these kind of factors came together to force construction companies to look at robotics and seriously consider it. The 4th vertical that I would say this is still, it's warming up, but definitely it's coming, is healthcare, medical devices, and biotech. How we can use robotics to speed up drug discovery, for example. Can we create a closed loop system of robots figuring out formulas, do the testing, and then get the result, feed it back to the algorithm, and then the algorithm will come with a new formula and so forth. There is a lot of iteration until you come with the right kind of composition. There is a lot of repetitive tasks in labs and biomanufacturing and healthcare in general. There is a huge room there, and the technology reached a level of maturity that we can do a lot of stuff. And during COVID, we have seen that there have been lots of spaces that we want to use robotics to handle. It's definitely a space that it's warming up. We've made already 3 investments in the space in Switzerland called Bionomus, and a company in the US, ClaraPath, and Imago Rehab, a spinoff from Harvard.
I'm also curious because you have this global perspective, right? And we're hearing a lot in the news today about how robotics actually is going to be an enabler, for instance, bringing manufacturing back to the US. Could you maybe just speak a little bit about the positive components of that, but also is there a dark side of that as well?
Yeah, robotics is definitely an enabler to bring manufacturing back to the US. And I might even claim that it's probably the only way to do that. If we are really serious about that, it's all about robotics and automation. And you will be surprised to know that China today is the largest market for robotics and automation. So even though that they compete on labor cost, they are aware that they cannot sustain that. And they are doing a lot of work around robotics, automation, and AI. I think this is the next frontier of competition in terms of speed, cost, and accuracy and precision. The technology is getting there in terms of, can robots become more precise, more fast, more compact, more safe to be around? Can we have machine vision technologies that may be getting close to human capability or even far better than that? We are looking at companies in Europe now that has phenomenal machine vision capability in terms of like really distinguishing very small items. Think of transistors and electronics and zippers and these kind of small things haven't been historically kind of things that we would use robots to pick and manipulate, but also handling transparent items. This is one of the toughest problems in machine vision because a camera or a machine vision algorithm cannot really differentiate if it's a transparent item or not.
Fascinating.
So think of tubes, transparent tubes for biotech and lab testing. So these the kind of advances that we are seeing.
Yeah.
And in terms of the dexterity of the robots themselves, the manipulators, the end effectors, also we're seeing a lot of advances. So there is no doubt the technology is getting there. But a key problem that we have been seeing consistently is the disconnect between the manufacturers, the people who need robotics and automation, and the people who create the products, they innovate. So there is a disconnect between those two groups. And this makes it a little bit harder and longer to come up with products that actually solve some of the problems that those manufacturers have. And this was one of the key focus I had over the last 10 years, is speaking with lots of corporates, because those are the markets for technology and robotics. And the cycle should really start from, let's understand the problems and then go back and figure out solutions for that. Not coming up with cool technology and try to push that to the market. So I think this is important. And we try to do that in cybernetics. Core part of our strategy is being plugged and engaged with the markets that we're looking at and the key kind of corporates in those markets to truly understand what are the problems they're trying to solve.
As you're talking about this, you mentioned there's a hope that some of these technologies could even be, I guess I would say, superhuman, right? Beyond that. So using that as a thought, some people look at this and they get excited, right? And others don't. And in the news media, especially, as they say, if it bleeds, it leads, right? So there's this whole notion of the rise of the machines, they're coming to take our jobs. All the fear mongering is out there. If we haven't noticed it with AI, which is intangible, but we can understand as automating some jobs, I'm sure there'll be even more fear around something you can actually touch and see. The World Economic Forum released a report a couple months ago speaking about AI, just saying, for instance, they believe it will replace or displace about 80 million jobs, but it'll probably create 90, 100 million jobs in the process. What is your take on this? And how should, as a society, should we process this? Is it really we should be scared and figure out how to adapt and use that fear? Or is this like robots are coming just in time for some reason?
Let's make a very important distinction. When we say robots, we don't mean humanoids. So those are two different things. And I think the general public do not make this distinction. Like Hollywood did us a favor and a disfavor and basically promoted robotics, and robotics is cool and very exciting, very interesting. But at the same time, most of those movies, robots get out of control and it become a scary movie. But when we speak about robotics, we don't mean humanoid. This is a very important distinction. In my mind, robotics is just smart machines. It's a smart automation. So if you take an automated machine and you add AI to it, it becomes a robot. So this is one way, a simple way to think of it. If you take the AI, it's just automation. If it's AI with nothing moves, it's just AI. It's just a software. If you combine the two, then you get robotics. For some reason, and we could theorize about that, but for some reason, people are very concerned and they have a lot of negative perception about robotics. But the reality is, it's just another evolution of economies, industries, and the kind of stuff that humans have been created since the invention of the wheel and the lever, all the way to having some sort of using animals as motors back in like ancient Egyptians when they use animals for agriculture and kind of moving stuff. And then people said, you know what, let's create some sort of other mechanism that's less dependent on animals.
Right.
Let's use river currents, for example. Then you have the creation of all of these kind of things that rely on wind or to move some of the mechanisms that we created. And then humans invented, obviously, the steam engine. And then you have all the evolution of engines until we came to the Industrial Revolution. And when you track this development, how many jobs got displaced? A lot. The invention of the automobile displaced the whole industry of carrots and horses and all of that. Totally. Would it have made sense back then to say, no, we are not going to use the automobiles because it's going to kill the carriage industry and let's just stick to that? It wouldn't make any sense. Right. So I think this is a natural evolution. We as humans, we are converging into some sort of an end. Again, we can have many philosophies around that. What we're like, we want to be more fast. We want to be more productive. We want to be doing less work. So depending on your beliefs and your ideas, you can build all sorts of theories. But we are converging into something. That's why this evolution is happening, because it's happening because we are driven into a certain end. I would think of what's happening now in robotics and AI as just another evolution in this kind of path.
Yeah.
And I think what we are trying to do as a race, we are trying to get rid of the repetitive, boring, dangerous, dirty tasks, which has been key words for automation and using robotics, the 3Ds, right? So, which when you think about it, I think every human deserves not to do a boring task, not to do a dangerous task, and not to do a dirty task. So I would say that this is part of our souls, that we want to get rid of that, right? Yeah. So what this will do for us, this will offload us from these tasks and make us think and experience, I would say, what we were really meant for as humans.
It's like we're another inch closer to understanding that.
I think so. Because like if you have a machine doing the repetitive task, now your role is you are supervising the machine, because I don't think that we are yet at the point that 100% trusting machines in terms of quality and consistency and all of that. So we will still need humans to supervise machines. Even ChatGPT and all of that, you have humans reviewing what they're doing because it's not 100% accurate, right? And so this will offload us from the kind of repetitive and dangerous task and allow us to do more of a higher level thinking and experiencing.
Yes.
And finding meaning in what we are doing. And maybe it will change the concept of work, because work is a concept.
That's right.
When you think of work in the Industrial Revolution, the whole 9 to 5 and the whole idea of you are being measured by how many hours you are at the factory, because hours would translate immediately to productivity. You are measured on how many products or how many items you process or you work on per minute or per hour, right?
Yeah.
So you were, in a sense, a machine, right? You were sent to factories to work as a machine. And one of the frictions that we see today is when managers and CEOs try to use the same industrial age methodology and apply to people who are doing mental work. If you are in a creative and I would say maybe more of a strategic thinking and a relationship building, how do you measure this in hours? No way. There are some people, their inspiration comes to them in the shower, right? Or at night, right? If you force them to, like, it's a 9 to 5 job, you're not tapping into what really clicks with them, right? You are forcing them to do something that it doesn't happen naturally. Maybe some people, they like to be in the outdoors. They get their best ideas when they are walking outdoors.
Yep.
And you will be super pissed off if they are not in the office. But guess what? It doesn't work. So we need to think about the whole concept of work and measuring productivity and the whole relationship between managers and employees. I think it's worth revisiting all of that now, because the age is totally different. 9 to 5, 5 days a week, being in the office. That's why remote work is taking off, right?
That's right. So you just gave me a treasure trove of things to talk about. I have 3 questions that I want to try to get in here in our time left because of that. You talked about the convergence, like where something's happening, right? We're working towards something. And I think your story about first relying on animals and there's a river, we can rely on currents, right? The shifting of reliance. And one of the phenomena that we talk about on this show is that as we begin to shift our reliance from humans to machines to do the more objective or transactional elements of work, it naturally means we're going to be shifting our reliance on the human to do the more subjective or relational components of work. And this is probably one of the first times in these revolutions that finally, as a human, you're going to do this, right? So maybe go a little bit deeper. You talked a little bit about it before. What are we going to be relying on humans for in this future? What skills will we covet?
Yeah, so the kind of jobs that we'll be relying on humans to do if we have lots of robots running around. First, supervising robots. I think every human will become a supervisor, and humans will be the kind of the frontline workers. So this is one thing to make sure of the quality, consistency, fixing bugs, and all of that. So this is one whole kind of category of jobs. The second one is people who will actually debug and fix robots, because robots will break down, they will have some issues, and this could be both hardware and software. Yes, we can create robots that will fix robots. Again, I do believe that we will still need humans to make sure of that. And then the third thing is, I don't think that robots are good now in terms of anticipating things. So we will rely on humans to anticipate. The definition of that will vary from one industry to another, from one stakeholders within this industry to the other. So just a few examples. If you work in a factory, anticipation is about thinking of what's happening in the economy, what's happening in terms of the demand and the supply. Is there a supply chain crisis? Is there high demand coming up? Is there a new policy in the government that might impact your work? And making sense of all of that, and how this will impact maybe production or inventory levels in terms of buying certain critical components because the supply chain. Robots are not yet there, and AI is not yet there. This is too complex, right? So this anticipation, connecting dots and thinking and higher level of thinking and planning, we definitely will need humans to do that. Making sense of certain feedback and customer sentiments. Yes, AI can do some of that, but I don't think it's yet at the level of synthesizing that and making sense. What do customers are looking for, and how this might feed into new features or new products. So I think these are some of the things that we will need more and more skilled humans to work on. And as you can see, the skills are more of a higher level of thinking, higher level of synthesizing. Still, we will need kind of people that mechanics fix machines and fix robots. We'll still need all of that. But I would say a nice analogy is Amazon, for example. It's a typical warehousing order fulfillment process, right? Mm-hmm. They use the robots to basically move the items, move the racks. And still, the humans are reviewing orders. They are picking the orders, the items, they doing the packaging, making sure that this is correct. And humans are walking around, making sure that the robots are moving properly. I'm speaking about the Kiva system, the Amazon Robotics systems.
Okay.
And obviously, it's no secret that they created far more jobs than any other warehousing or e-commerce company that is not using robots, because basically they increase their market share, they increase their economic power, and now they can employ more people, they can expand to other geographies. So this is what robots can do for us. But I think a very important skill that I think eventually we will all need, and I might be a little biased, but we all need to be system thinkers. What does this mean is we all need to understand, how do systems work? And there are family systems, there are economical systems, there are organizational systems. How do systems work, and what are the basic components of a system? And what are some of the basic principles of systems? There are certain principles that do not change. Those are universal, I would say, truth about systems.
Mhm.
I think this is very important because otherwise we will lose the larger picture and we might even lose control of robots. So the open letter that was just released about like slowing down the
Yeah, I
development
saw that.
and all of that. I think this it makes sense because we need to think of the larger system and how what's happening now will impact larger elements of our system.
Fantastic. Good segue into our last problem space. So you're an investor, right? And you're investing in early stage companies. And we all know the risks associated with venture capital, right? And that there's an idea, but then there's the founder. So you are having to make calculations on different types of data than you would another type of business. And I assume a lot of your calculating is really trying to get a sense of the product itself, the idea or innovation, and that founder and why that makes sense. You're investing in people and you probably have in your mind some sort of like performance schematic or something you look for. Could you maybe share a little bit of that with us? How do you think about the value of a human in this work context?
This is a very loaded question,
Yeah.
uh, but I'll try to answer it. So, how do we think about our investments and founders and how we make an assessment? And again, I think the best investors out there are system thinkers because really investment is one of the most complex jobs because and lots of people try to use AI to
Yeah.
inform investment. You might do some of that in the stock market because it's highly quantitative. You have all the numbers and all the data is out there. But in private companies, early stage companies, you don't have data. You don't have numbers. They don't have any revenues. So how would you think about those companies? And most of the AI algorithms have been correlation basis rather than causality. So they look at
Mm.
things that correlate, not things that cause each other. And those are fundamentally two different things. I do think that good investors are system thinkers because they need to think of markets and where markets are going. They need to think of technologies and how these technologies are maturing and evolving. They need to think of the team and the founders and their background and their kind of attitudes and their track record and achievements, and also how they think about the business. They need to think about the execution and the business modeling and how this will actually be brought to the market and how you will price that. Like the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So imagine that you need to think about all of that at the same time, like how all of this will play together. And not only that, you need to think about how this will evolve over time because the time horizon of your investment is 5 to 10 years. So you not only that, you need to make an assessment now, you need also to think how this will play out because maybe it looks nice now, but down the road it might not work out because, for example, electric vehicles are taking off. And if they have a larger market share, it might make your investment now obsolete. Or maybe this is a nice technology, but what if one of the large incumbents like Amazon or Walmart try to do what you're doing and basically get you out of business? So
Yeah.
it's also lots of anticipation. But I think that very nice quote I really like. It says that good judgment comes from experience and experience comes from bad judgment. So we learn a lot from our mistakes. And I think when I look back at my career and all the stuff that have been engaged with the corporate and academia and research and starting my own companies and getting involved into the robotics and mass robotics and building and scaling mass robotics and then the fund and the hundreds of startups I dealt with, the founders I dealt with, and I saw some of those succeed, some of those fail. All of this is somehow coded in my brain in terms of certain patterns
Yeah.
of successful entrepreneurs. And you basically, this is where the experience comes in. You look at someone and say, okay, I think this person fits into this pattern. And it doesn't mean that you just make a quick assessment or judgment. You still need to make reference calls and you need to do your own due diligence, but at least it inform you which direction, what are the blind spots you want to check
Yeah.
out.
Fady, thank you so much. I've highlighted many golden nuggets in this that we will use. I appreciate your time today. Is there anything else that you wanted to say or address you wanted us to share with the audience?
Not really. I think
Okay.
in the introduction, I spoke about the whole investment clause
Oh,
for
yes. Yep.
think this is something important. And I think it's a great time for robotics companies and for people to innovate around the space. It's a unique opportunity.
Cool. I agree. Thank you so much.